This week's Theme Deck Tuesday is featuring the best energy acceleration in the Theme Deck format in the form of Magnezone with its magnetic circuit ability. Let's see just how well it stacks up against the other Theme Decks, and of course be sure to subscribe down below if you do enjoy the Theme Deck format just as much as I do. And while you're down there are timestamps in the description if you want to skip past the deck profile. Getting into the deck review and profile here, as you can see, one of the first things that strikes you with this deck is it is extremely compact and simple for a theme deck. There is no fluff, no filler, but that can also be a huge hindrance, as you'll see in the matches after this. Now, the main focus of the deck and the starting Pokemon that's on the box, all that good stuff, is the Zeraora here, as its main attack is the Discharge for 3 energy, but you can have more on it. You deal 50 damage for each lightning energy that you discard from this Pokemon, so this can scale infinitely for however many energy that you have attached, or really however many energy that you have in your deck. You're never really going to need more than, say, 4 energy in order to deal 200 against all of the stage 2 Pokemon, but for the most part, the 3 energy that covers the attack cost is going to be enough to get a knockout on pretty much every Pokemon in the theme deck format. And then the first attack, Crushing Claw, isn't really all that relevant because there's not a super huge amount of special energy in the theme deck format, but it does have a 1 retreat cost, which is very notable and nice to keep track of. The main partner Pokemon for Zeraora is of course the Magnezone. This is the star of the show, what makes this deck potentially good, as it does have the ability here, Magnetic Circuit, which allows you to attach as many lightning energy to your Pokemon as you like during your turn. So of course this is going to get all of your set up Pokemon, or all of your evolutions, everything. Your Zeraora can do a huge attack with it. It's great, but it is a stage 2, so you're going to potentially struggle to get it set up. And unlike other stage 2 decks like the Charizard deck and the Dragonite deck, this one is going to struggle to get your Magnezone into play, because as you can see there are no item cards other than Switch. We have 2 Switch for a little bit of free movement, but there are no search cards. So no Quick Ball, no Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, what else is there? Pokemon Communication is a big one in theme format. None of that in this deck, so you're only relying on drawing cards through your supporters, which is a huge downfall for the deck, and it really holds it back to actually being good because you're not able to get anything set up. Now, we do have a good complement, so we do have the Meowth here with Caterday, which allows us to draw 2 in the early game, which is reasonable, and we also have some other good attackers which only require 2 energy to attack with. So the Eradicate, only 2 energy attack cost, but only deals 70, and then the same with the Dodrio here, only 2 energy but only deals 90, so not great attacks overall, definitely kind of lackluster, and there's a lot that's left to be desired. Now let's get into the matches, see how the deck performs overall, and I'll go into a lot more detail of how the deck works and why it is so poor. Getting straight into our first game here, we do have a nice start getting the Meowth right off the bat, but this is a pretty typical hand for us where we're just going to be dead drawing for the first couple of turns, and if we're not able to draw out of this and get a couple of good Pokemon down, then it's probably going to be game over on our end. My opponent is playing the Vivid Voltage Charizard deck, so they should be able to get set up fairly quickly here. Not quite as quickly as some of the other decks like the other Charizard deck, but they do have the Great Ball for the Charmeleon, so they're able to get the Charizard set up fairly quickly over the next coming turns here. All we have going for us is the How, and we could always attack my opponent for 30 damage here with our Meowth. Not sure how relevant that's going to be. We might just go for a Caterday in order to draw some cards and get some Pokemon into play. We'll have to see. We do in fact top deck Pokemon, so I will put down our Doduo, could be a good attacker in this matchup, and we'll use our How. We do get into the Eradicate line, which is kind of nice. I will go for that and start attaching energy, and we'll go for the Caterday to draw 2 cards. We do have to go to sleep, but we might wake up. We do have plenty of opportunity, and there we go, we do wake up. So even if we didn't, we do have the Switch in our hand. drawing into the Lily is probably the worst supporter that we could possibly get, and it's just one of the worst supporters in theme decks in general, because you typically have a large hand like this unless you're able to play it out if you have a bunch of items, but often not going to be drawing into those cards in theme decks. Here my opponent does get the Charmeleon, like I said, and they're playing a Dan. Let's go for the Rock. We're going to get a tie. Oh man, they got it the second time, that sucks. They're going to be able to draw 4 cards off of that Dan, and that's going to give them a really snubble hand advantage, since our hand is pretty much dead. We're just relying on the Caturday. Let's see, we could play down the Raticate plus an energy and the switch. I don't think that's going to be enough to actually draw with our Lily though, unfortunately. My opponent here does have the Charmeleon with 2 energy, which can deal 60 damage. That is going to be enough to get a knockout on our Caturday, not our Caturday, our Meowth. It is a cat, just, you know, the name of the attack and all that good stuff. Let's promote our Rattata. We've got our Raticate that we can put into play here and at least deal some damage back to my opponent. And we did top deck the How, which is excellent. We can draw 3 more cards, but of course all 3 of those cards are going to be completely dead for us, so we can just attack into my opponent. We deal 70 damage and we are forced to switch. Now I would have loved if that was a little bit more damage and we were able to get the knockout there. 70 is just not quite enough, and like I said, you know, my opponent is going to be playing the Charizard deck, which has a bunch of HP compared to the other Charizard, 170 here. The other Charizard from, was it Team Up, I think? That one has 150 HP, which is a lot more manageable, especially since they have to put damage counters on themselves, so we would have been able to hit that one, but this Charizard is a lot more tricky to take out for our little Raticate here. Especially since we can't get set up really, we're just forced to single attachments. And my opponent is also singly attaching, but they do have the Bead supporter available to them. Of course we can attach multiple energy if we get our Magnezone, but the downside to having a really powerful card like Magnezone is the fact that you're never able to get it set up in this team deck, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that case. And here we see my opponent is using Battle Sense, not getting the Leon into the discard, but they don't mind because they're still dealing more than enough damage in order to knock out our Doduo. And once again here we see we top deck another card that we can't use. No point in attaching energy because we can't make use of it anyway. We only need 2 energy to sack, and that's going to be game for my opponent, as of course Raticate only has a pitiful 70 HP. Very low amount of HP, and my opponent really doesn't need to do anything as they're already dealing 100 damage. And it just goes to show you that if this deck is not able to get set up at all, then it's going to be an auto loss in almost every situation. Really unfortunate, but hopefully we can get set up in the next match. Fingers crossed anyways. Alright, game 2, we have a much better start right here. Now we don't have a supporter or anything like that, but we do have our Caturday Meowth that we can rely on here, since we can start drawing 2 cards with that. Hopefully keeping it awake as well would be ideal. And we do get down the early Magnemite, which will get us towards a Magnezone here. My opponent does have the How, and they also get a heads off of the timer wall, which is excellent for them, as that's going to get them into a Salazzle here, which is a very good Pokemon to make use of. We have been able to be lucky enough to stumble across another player using a relatively old deck compared to all of the other ones that you'll typically be playing against. So that is something that I really love to see, when someone else uses an older deck and will actually get a fair matchup. So let's see how this turns out. We'll Caturday here to draw 2, and we do get into supporter, which is excellent. We should hopefully be able to get into at least one Magnemite, or not Magnemite, the next one, Magneton, that's it. Hopefully we'll get into one of those off of this Cynthia. And we do also have some options, although my opponent is evolving into the Salazzle here. Pretty sure it has some interesting attacks to do with poison. Yep, severe poison makes it so that we take 4 damage counters between turns when we're poisoned, and that's exactly what my opponent's going for, because that is going to give them the knockout, which is a little unfortunate. We can promote the Rattata here, hoping that we get into a Raticate in order to deal some damage back into my opponent. We'll might as well put down the other Dodo here, and we'll go with the Cynthia. I'll hold on to the switches since my opponent is relying on poison so heavily. Those switches are most likely going to come in quite useful. And of course we don't draw into a Raticate or even any of the evolutions of our Magnemites here, so this is definitely not ideal, not what I want to see. Let's have a look at our Magnemite. We can search for 3 lightning energy, I guess. The other option is using a Rattata to do 30 damage, which could be reasonable, I guess. We can start attaching to Dodrio here, so we'll just have to go with that, I suppose. We'll attach and we'll just hit with our Rattata, dealing 30 damage, and then on the following turn we can go in with our Dodrio, yeah, and get a good amount of damage off with that, since it is only a 2 energy attacker, which is very efficient, that we can deal 90 damage for that amount of energy, which is pretty reasonable, especially on a stage 1 Pokemon in this meta. My opponent is just developing their board here, looking to get all of their Pokemon evolved up as well, and just probably continuing to use severe poison as they will be able to get a knockout. Rattata does only have a very minuscule amount of HP, so it is very easy to get a knockout, but considering they're doing this animation, I'm guessing they're not using severe poison, and they're going to be using the other attack to get cards out of the deck. Nasty Plot gets them 2 cards out of the deck, any 2 that they wish, so that's very good for them. And we can go for the retreat here. I think we do have enough damage for the knockout, so I'm going to go for that before my opponent's able to do any more damage. We do have the How as well. Let's see, we do get into the Magnezone, which is perfect, and I'll hold on to these other Pokemon for now, and we'll just go for the knockout on my opponent, dealing that 90 damage, and we get to take our first prize card of the video and of this match. And my opponent did get the XP share into play. Nice, we get the Magnezone off of the prizes. That is excellent. But yeah, my opponent has the XP share in play, which is going to keep their energy in play when we knock out their active, which is very useful as it's going to allow them to build up their Zweilous, which will eventually go into the Hydreigon, which is their big stage 2 that they try and get into. But we got the Magnezone, which is perfect. We just need a good attacker to go along with it now. And we have the How to draw some extra energy, I guess. We could always use Magnezone itself to attack. It does deal 130 damage, and my opponent's Houndoom has 110. So even with our Dodrio, we wouldn't be able to get a knockout. The only issue here is if we do go in with our Magnezone and do that, then we're going to be in a little bit of a tough spot when my opponent brings in their Hydreigon, so probably not the best to do that just yet. We could go on with our Meowth though and actually draw some cards, so I kind of like this idea. It's going to be stalling for a little bit, but it's going to give us time to set up the rest of our board quite nicely, so we'll go with this. We also have our Magnezone we can attach a couple of extra energy onto our Pokemon with, so put one onto Rattata, also attach them onto our Magnezone in case we want to use that to attack, and then we can hold off on this last one. Don't need to overextend and attach all of them, and we can use Caturday to draw some extra cards, getting into another Magneton as well as an extra energy, which is absolutely what you love to see. My opponent is going to be attaching onto their active once again. They're going to be looking for the knockout here as they're able to deal 90 damage, which is definitely obliterating our little Meowth here. And let's promote our Dodrio since it does have a free retreat cost, so we can easily get out of it if we need to. We do get into the Raticate, which is quite good. Not a huge amount of damage with that Raticate as we've seen in the last match, but could be useful to finish something off. And we do have a second Dodrio as well. And let's see here. We do get the Zeraora, which could be good. Let's put that into play as a reasonable attacker. And I think I do want to get the knockout on this Houndoom. So, I mean, we could go with Magnezone, but I'm just so wary of doing that because my opponent's most likely got the Hydreigon to get the return knockout, which is definitely not what I want. I think we'll go in and use our Zeraora to get the knockout this time around. So So we'll retreat and use our Magnezone to attach 3 energy onto the active, and we can then discard all 3 of those energy with Zeraora in order to deal 150 damage and easily get the knockout. We do have to discard all of those energy, but hopefully this prize card will help us out. My opponent gets to keep their dark energy in play as well. As I mentioned, that prize definitely helps us out. That is Liquor, which is going to be awesome for getting us towards some extra cards, mostly some energy. And here we go, like I predicted, my opponent does have the Hydreigon, which they're immediately going to evolve into so that they can start attacking us. It does have an interesting attack here as it deals 120 damage, and you can also discard an energy from itself in order to try and discard an energy from our active, which could be good. But for the most part, we're not going to mind about that too much since we do accelerate energy so much. Now, I think we'll go in with our Dodrio since it has free retreat once again. You always want to be promoting that first and foremost. Let's go for a Looker, draw the bottom 3 cards of our deck. If we get into another Looker, which is reasonable enough, but unfortunately we don't have any energy here, so we are going to be forced to attack with our Dodrio. And I'll hold off on the other Pokemon that we have in our hand. Like I said, there's still no pressure to put those into play just yet, so we'll just attack with our Dodrio, and we can follow that up with a Raticate to deal 70 damage and get the knockout, I believe. Just want to check the attack on this. Pretty sure, yeah, if it's an evolution then we get to switch, so that's fine. The 70 damage is going to be enough here since my opponent has exactly 70 HP remaining. It's just going to be a case of if we draw into the energy, and that's not quite the energy, but we do have the Liquor. Let's see if we get it. There we go, that is the last card, so very close to not getting it, but we did get there in the end, which is exactly what we want. Also going to put down a Stunfisk and Zeraora now, since we do have the Lily in our hand. We can make use of that on the following turn, and we're going to use our Raticate to get the knockout on Hydreigon. We can also retreat into one of our Pokemon, well, switch out, and my opponent doesn't have a huge amount of attackers, but I do want to protect our energy, so I'm going to chalk up the Stunfisk here. Can be a good attacker overall, so if we get to make use of it then we will, but otherwise if my opponent knocks it out then I don't really mind. We have a bunch of other attackers that we can make use of here. So a very fair and even matchup. I feel like my opponent's had some good knockouts here throughout the game. They've certainly gone quite far ahead since we had to take a bit of a backseat in the early game with our Meowth to try and draw some cards. But we've been able to make a little bit of a comeback in terms of our energy acceleration keeping us in the game here. My opponent playing a Nestball, getting some more Pokemon out of their deck, but since we've taken these consecutive knockouts, it's going to be very difficult for my opponent to stay in the game at this point. Even though they are going down to 1 prize card, we're going to be wiping out all of the energy that they have remaining here, which will be excellent. Let's promote our Raticate. We do have the double switches in our hand, so we're going to make use of these along with a Lily, I think. Although How's probably going to draw us more cards. We'll play down 2, 3 with the Lily, so we're actually only drawing 2 cards off of Lily, so playing How or Looker is going to be better for us overall, so we'll go with that instead. We do get into 3 energy, which is very good. So we'll put one onto the Magnezone. I think we have a 4 retreat cost, or attack cost I should say. Houndoom has 110, of course, we know. I think we're going to have to put 2 onto the Magnezone, since we don't really want to be discarding the energy on Zeraora. So I will just put it onto the Magnezone here. We can also attach one, and apparently we're already attached, so we're going to have to use the ability here. Put one onto Zeraora, and then I'll also switch out into the Magnezone in order to get our attack off, getting the knockout and going down to 2 prize cards on our end. We'll have to see what my opponent comes up with, since they're not going to have any energy in play. They can only attach 1 at a time, and they are going to be promoting a Beware here. So this requires 3 energy, and they also have the Stuffle here, which requires 2 as fighting type, so they could hit us for weakness, but considering they need 2 energy in order to use that, I highly doubt they're going to be making use of it anytime soon. And yeah, they are just going to be using it to draw some additional cards, which totally makes sense here. They did put the energy on the Oranguru, so that they could use a Psychic, which would be dealing a significant amount of damage for sure, considering our Magnezone requires 4 energy. And it does do 60, yeah, it would do more for Eradicate as well. So that Oranguru is really going to be a problem for us if we're not able to deal with it, but we should be okay, we'll have to see. Let's go for a Looker once again, we do have plenty of those after all. And there's not really any of these Pokemon that we want to play out, so I'll just continue to attach these energy onto our Zeraora. I think it's going to be a nice big finisher for us, so might as well have that at the ready. And we'll go for a retreat into Raticate, I think, or we could even just retreat into the Zeraora now, or we could switch out, I guess. Yeah, sure, we'll switch into this and use our big attack in order to go down to 1 prize card remaining. We just want to keep ahead of our opponent at this point, I think, and ensure that we're going to win the game, because even if they attach 1 energy here, they're not going to be able to do much. We did drop the energy off of the prizes, so we should be able to retreat our Zeraora since we have a 1 retreat cost. That means that we can just go straight into our Magnezone and get the knockout, and my opponent is going to be 1 energy card attachment behind here from winning the game, so we should be able to close out this game nice and easily. Well, I say easily, but it was actually pretty close, so maybe not easily, but yeah, here we go. We managed to get the win. We can retreat into our Magnezone, which already has all of our energy on it, and once again go for that Zap Cannon, getting the knockout on my opponent and taking our last prize cards. Very close game there, and that's how the deck typically works. You want to get your Magnezone set up so that you can effectively put energy into play and get everything rolling, but you do have to be playing against a similar level deck as we've seen there, which was a little bit of an older deck. So let's get into it one more game to see what we can make happen one last time. Oh, we're up against Stormcaller in this matchup, the other big lightning deck in the theme deck format. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. My opponent is most likely going to be getting set up much faster than we are, because as you can see, they're able to flip double heads on Timer Ball, and that is exactly what you need in that deck, is the fact that it plays multiple Timer Ball and you have lots of chances of being able to get your evolution Pokemon out of your deck and into play as quickly as possible is exactly what you need in order to be consistent. All we have is a Rattata, which can use Gnaw for 30, which I guess we'll have to take. We do have the How here, but of course we get into a second Magneton. Why would we draw into anything else? So we'll just have to go for Gnaw. Dealing 30 damage, let's see how much this Smeargle has. Does have 80 HP, so we're going to have to deal 30 damage 3 times. We can't just 2-hit the Smeargle, which is very unfortunate. And my opponent does have the Lady, as well as the Naganadel and the Zebstrika in their hand, so they're going to be able to put both of those into play and start drawing through their deck very effectively. If they get a switch here as well, we could actually see my opponent taking a knockout on our Rattata, which would very quickly win the game for them, I would have to say. Let's see if they go for that. They could definitely attach energy, and well, they have attached energy, but they could use the charging up ability, I believe it's called. Yeah, charging up. But interesting, it looks like they're choosing not to do either of those things. Definitely should have used sprint there and went for it, in my opinion, but I guess they're holding off and waiting for something else. We'll go for it, the Looker. Let's see what the bottom 3 cards are that we get. Nothing too spectacular here, I must say. We could retreat into our Stunfisk, I suppose, and start dealing some damage with that. We'd still be dealing 30 damage, so seems reasonable to go with that route. And we can always build up to the other attack on Stunfisk, which deals extra damage, so we'll go with this. 30 onto my opponent and 10 onto ourselves. It does seem a little backwards to be damaging your own bench, but when you're able to deal additional damage with your secondary attack, it definitely helps out in order to get those extra damage numbers up for sure. My opponent does get the Raikou, which they're going to be putting into play. Now they do need the Ampharos in order for that Raikou to actually be effective at all, otherwise they're going to be stuck doing like 30 damage, which is not ideal. And we do see them attach another energy onto the Naganadel, which definitely makes sense. And we see they have the switch in their hand, so they had it the whole time, or maybe they just drew it off of the how there. But either way, they definitely should have done that last turn in my opinion. We do have a Fisherman that we can make use of, probably not going to do that though. Doesn't seem like it's going to be worth it. I think we will be attaching onto the active though, so that we can do some reasonable damage. And we'll also use our how. Let's see, we get into Eradicate. I guess we can evolve there. And I was really hoping for the Magnabite, but it's not going to be happening for us. We can only hit our opponent for 60 damage, which is again not even enough for a 2-hit because Naganadel has 130 HP rather than 120. It's going to be a very difficult, grindy kind of matchup if we want to ever try to win this. But considering my opponent's able to just deal 80 damage every single turn, it's going to be near impossible for us to keep up with that, considering the energy attachments that we're very much lacking right now, since we have an absence of Magnezone. And my opponent is able to attach every turn manually from their hand, but they can also use that charging up ability if they discard some energy. Then you can use that to get extra energy into play, and the deck does play some energy switches on their side as well, which they can use to move energy off of Naganadel once you've charged up. And let's see, they go for a Nest Ball, so most likely looking for another way of getting a second Ampharos, but no, they're just getting the Poipole once again, which is fair enough. They could always sacrifice their Smeargle at some point if they really want to get a extra bench space there, but they don't really need it as they are dealing 80 damage every single turn, and that is all they need in order to win this match really. I think we'll be promoting our little Rattata here. Don't really want to sacrifice my other Pokemon, and probably just going to be attaching onto the Raticate in order to get a knockout, as we can deal 70 damage with that. And we'll also put down the Stunfisk. We don't have much, well we do have a bunch of energy, but kind of want to make full use out of the Fisherman, and we do have energy in our hands still, so we'll hold off on that for now and just pass over to my opponent, sacrificing our Rattata so that we can have an extra turn of attachments, give my opponent a prize card, but it means that we can get a prize card in return, although they are going to be attaching energy onto their bench, and of course they get another double heads on Timer Ball, so they're able to get the entire Ampharos evolution line out of their deck, which is absolutely crazy because that card is super strong if you can get it set up. So here they are evolving into Flaffy. They have the second Naganadel in their hand as well, which they can evolve into. So my opponent is totally set up now at this point. They have all of their evolution Pokemon available, and they can make use of all of those any way that they still wish. So we do promote our Raticate. We can attach onto that dude as well. I suppose we'll go for the Fisherman to get some energy out of the discard now, I suppose, just so that we have it in our hand and available in case we don't draw into any, and we can get the knockout with our Raticate, and we also have the ability to switch, so we'll go into our Stunfisk here, no reason not to. Now we do get our first prize card of the game. Unfortunately it's going to be a Magnezone. Again, if it was a Magnemite that would have served us much better, but we'll just have to deal with what we were given. My opponent's most likely going to be promoting the Ampharos here, or the Fluffy at least, and then evolving into the Ampharos, as that will allow them to start spreading a bunch of damage counters around my board, as the Ampharos does deal 50 damage to 2 Pokemon, which is very effective, and they can also paralyze us. But we do have these switches in our hand, so we don't really worry about the paralysis just yet. We'll have to see what my opponent has or where they attach their energy. They're going to be putting onto the Smeargle, which is very interesting, and they are in fact going for that paralysis, putting those 2 lightning energy into the Lost Zone. Now if they want to start attaching onto the Raikou, it is going to be dealing 120 damage, which is pretty reasonable for them. And they're going to be using the Smeargle here, but they're not able to get any effect off of it because it does require our hand have a supporter card in it, and we don't have a supporter card, so my opponent is going to be getting 0 use out of the Smeargle here. We can start attaching energy onto our Dodrio, and we also have the switch, like I said, to go straight into our Raticate, and we do get a knockout on the Smeargle since we damaged it earlier, and it was good to see that damage did in fact come in relevant. And I did also predict it that my opponent would promote and sacrifice their Smeargle in order to clear up a bench space and only have the essentials on their bench space, and so that they can also build up a second Ampharos most likely. Let's see if they have the Rescue Stretcher. So yeah, they still have Rescue Stretcher available, which they could use to also get out a Naganadel once again. Pretty sure it plays a couple of Poipo, so they could go ahead and reuse their Naganadel. But they're going to be attaching onto the Raikou. Let's see if they remember to use their Charging Up, because they didn't actually use Charging Up on Naganadel last turn, so perhaps they're just forgetting to use it, or they're not aware of it. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. My opponent is getting a knockout on us since they did use the Kukui there, and we're going to be forced into our Dodrio and attaching energy onto it so that we can deal a sizable amount of damage. I mean, it's not going to be close enough to knockout, especially not with Stunfisk as a backup attacker, but it's better than nothing. And my opponent shouldn't be able to get a knockout at least, or oh no, maybe they will. We have 100 HP. For some reason I was under the impression we had 110, but no, I was in fact thinking of the Stunfisk, which has 110, so it would be able to survive a couple of hits from the barrage of Ampharos, dealing 50 damage to our board just all over the place. But yeah, have the Raikou fully set up here, putting 2 energy onto there. They're going to go for the Kahili, and of course they flip ahead because that's all they've done the entire game, so they get to keep Kahili in their hand still. And that's going to be allowing them to draw 2 cards, and they're just going to go for the attack once again, getting the knockout on our Dodrio. We do top deck a How, but it is definitely too little too late, drawing us into some more supporters and an energy, but our hand is completely dead here. So if this video has shown you anything, it is that this deck is super good at accelerating energy, but it only works when you actually get that Magnezone into play. And that is the main difficulty and setback of this deck, is that it's just a real struggle to actually get all of your Pokemon set up that you need, the main one being Magnezone. So yeah, I'd definitely stay away from this one, would not recommend it whatsoever, and I'll see you in the next video.